And welcome back to the Schlocky Horror Picture Show and the Corpse Vanishes, which pretty much describes tonight's audience. The rest of you lucky survivors will envy the dead when I tell you I have waiting on the line Mr. Shane Porteous, who played horror host Deadly Earnest in Brisbane in 1968. Yes, this is the same gentleman who starred in the long-running soapy A Country Practice as Kindly Dr. Elliot. And you thought he was such a nice doctor, but just like Dr. Jekyll, he could turn into Mr. Hyde at the drop of a hat. Since then, Shane has kept the Deadly Earnest tradition alive by occasionally killing off characters and neighbours. Mr. Porteous, are you there?
Not really, though.
Thank you for joining me here tonight on the Schlocky Horror Picture Show. Now, tell me, how on earth did you end up with a plum roll like Deadly Earnest?
It came about, I was approached by Channel O, now, up in Brisbane. I'd made a bit of a small-time amateur career at that stage, playing villains on stage. I played Caliban in The Tempest, and I played the man who turned into a rhinoceros in Rhinoceros. And I was doing theatre restaurant, playing the villain in The Drunkard. And so I had a bit of, and I loved doing my own makeup. I did that on stage for all sorts of shows. And Channel O approached me. They'd already had the Deadly Earnest in Sydney and in Melbourne, and because, of course, it wasn't networked in those days, every capital city had its own version of Deadly Earnest, so they asked me if I would do it. And they gave me a pretty open brief, and I decided that what I wanted was part vampire, part zombie who walked like Frankenstein's monster. So I sort of based it a bit on Boris Karloff, but also Alfred Hitchcock's television show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, was very popular then. So I sort of borrowed a bit of his voice, and I had to make my mouth sort of a bit more Frankenstein monster. I had cotton wool padding inside my lips long before Brando thought of the idea. And so I adopted a sort of a Hitchcock voice with a bit of Boris Karloff thrown in, and that was the character I did. But during and he was dressed, and he emerged from a coffin every night. That was the important thing. But having said that, we also did a few send-ups of other shows that were popular at the time, like the Dean Martin show was very popular, and his theme song was "Everybody Loves Somebody Sometime." Yeah, everybody loves somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow. Your love worth waiting for someone like you. So, Deadly was one night, which was one of our most successful shows. I had Wilbur Kentwall, who was a famous organist and pianist who worked on the ABC and on all sorts of shows all over Australia. He was probably the best known organist in Australia. And he was even then, I'm talking about 1968 or 67, 68, was very old. But he sort of came in for the joke. We had a big baby grand from Channel O in the studio. And so Deadly Earnest's introduction for that night was, everybody loves a body sometime. Everybody loves a corpse somehow. Your blood may be well worth bottling, but I'd rather drink it now.
I thought we agreed before the show, Shane. No singing. Another problem with working for community TV is that I have to do my own makeup. But your makeup with the droopy eye looked rather elaborate for 1970. Did it take long for you to apply the makeup?
About half an hour. If I was running late, 20 minutes. The droopy eye was actually an optical illusion. If I can remember correctly, I blacked out most around the right eye and whited out the top of that eye, and most of the time kept a slightly cocked eyebrow there. So the visual contrast of the blacked out area and the white around that one made this eye look as though it was drooping.
Did Channel Zilch, allow you to go out in public dressed like that? I mean to say, did you make any appearances as Deadly Earnest outside of your own television show?
And I was doing a schools tour of doing one-act plays that were set in that year's school syllabus, and I thought, and there was one particular play which is terrible, a really terrible old play, and we decided that anything goes, wherever we can get a laugh, fine. So I decided to play it as Deadly Earnest, and the first time I did it, I came along, staggered along, Deadly Earnest. Good evening, I'm Deadly Earnest. And there was dead silence. And I had to go through the whole play, playing Deadly Earnest, to utter silent confusion in the audience. It was a boarding school where kids weren't allowed to watch television, and they had no idea who Deadly Earnest was or what I was relating to. So that was the last time I ever made a public appearance as Deadly Earnest, and I can't.
Did you ever get any fan mail saying what a complete bastard you were? I get those sorts of letters all the time. I think it's because Alan Jones has his post office box next to mine.
I didn't do it for all that long, and I think there were only did a dozen shows, and it could be a bit more. I'm not sure now. I can't remember because then I left Brisbane to come down to Sydney and try to make it. Living as a real actor, and so the fan base didn't build up the way it did, I think, with the Deadly Earnest in Sydney and Melbourne. But we certainly did get a bit of feedback. Most of them hated the movie. I mean, because we called them, I called it, welcome, the Deadly Earnest, welcome to tonight's frightful movie. And they were, as often as not, frightful. And we had a lot of complaints saying, you really think that was scary? That was scary. My little sister scares me more than that film. And and sometimes I think we read, there were a couple of sort of more interesting complaints that we read on air, that I read on air. No, it wasn't. I don't think it was anywhere near the big deal it was in Sydney and Melbourne.
Your series didn't go for very long, only for about 3 or 4 months back in 1968. What happened then?
I left Brisbane and went to Sydney. Now, because the Saturday show, the kids show, was fairly successful, they were happy to fly me up every week for a while just to do the Saturday show. But the Deadly Earnest, because they only had a time slot that they could record that on a Thursday, they weren't going to fly me up to do that. So I was replaced by John Dobbett again, playing a character called Professor Macabre. And I can't remember his voice. I would try to imitate it if I could. But he was and I don't think I ever saw his set or anything, but I think there is a photograph of Professor Macabre killing off Deadly Earnest, never to appear again.
Do you still keep in contact with any of the people that you worked with back at Channel O? I'm still being stalked by people I met back in the 1920s, although some people call that haunting.
Not really, though. I did... our director, both for the Deadly Earnest segments and for the Saturday show, was Mike Murphy. And I left in '68, and I didn't see Mike until we started making A Country Practice in 1982. And Mike Murphy turned up as the drummer, as director on that. He directed a few of the early Country Practice shows. And then later, only a couple of years ago, I ran into him again down at Fremantle Media, make Neighbours, down there for a seminar on Neighbours. And Mike Murphy was there, who's went on to become a high-ranking international executive on Fremantle Media.
Were you able to keep any of Deadly's costumes as a memento of your time on the show?
No, I don't think any of it. I think I borrowed some of it from the various theatre companies I worked with, and none of it was ever mine. I don't think any of it was ever Channel O's either. I think I think I borrowed it from the theatre companies and wore it up there. I'd love to have kept the top hat.
For the last 4 decades, you've still been in the limelight, so to speak, with many Hector Crawford productions in the 70s, A Country Practice in the 80s, and Neighbours in the 90s. What have you been doing recently?
Well, at the moment, I'm involved in a terrific play called Codgers, which is touring New South Wales and Victoria and Tasmania. So if you get a chance to pop along and see that, do so. It's a very funny play and a very warm play. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for, Shane. These live satellite interviews are far more costly than we can afford here on Community TV. Thank you again for being my guest here tonight on the Schlocky Horror Picture Show.
It's been a pleasure. Does that mean that I'm going to be beamed up out of here on this cable television thing? I don't understand all this technology. I'm very old, you see, like several thousand years old. Good night, Nigel. I love your show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shane Porteous. Wow, what a nice guy. Out of his bloody mind, though. Back to tonight's presentation, The Corpse Vanishes. After playing so many mad scientists, it's no great stretch for Bela Lugosi to play a mad botanist. He almost sleepwalks through this one. This might be due to the non-challenging dialogue or the morphine addiction which had been plaguing him for years. That probably accounts for the large number of bad films he was in. In his dreamy state, everything looked good. Dr. Lawrence is committing all his crimes for the love of his wife. Sweet, yes, but cruel and hard on the people he uses as a means to an end. They certainly regret what he did for love, even if he doesn't. The bad doctor and his wife both sleep in coffins. I hope neither of them have a restless night. There's no room to turn over in those caskets. If they tried, they'd wake up on the floor, like I did. And did you see Bella taking a deep breath as the police opened the coffin in the car? A more observant police officer would have solved the case there and then and reduced the duration of the film by more than half. Elizabeth Russell, who plays the toffee-nosed Countess Lawrence, is well known to admirers of low-budget horror films, courtesy of memorable supporting roles she had in 4 of the best of them: The Cat People, Curse of the Cat People, The Seventh Victim, and Bedlam. Alas, she never got the substantial role in mainstream A-grade films that her talent deserved, despite being Rosalind Russell's sister-in-law, and she remains known and respected only by those who remember the films of Val Lewton. There is one member of the cast with a resume even more interesting than Bela Lugosi's. It's Angelo Rosito, who plays Toby, the sinister dwarf. Born in 1908, he appeared in more than 70 films in a career lasting nearly 60 years. I was going to list them all for you, but Mr. Porteous took up so much time, I can only name a few of Angelo's credits. Starting in the silent era, he shared the screen with my good friend John Barrymore in The Beloved Rogue, was one of the title characters in Freaks, the second little pig in Babes in Toyland, a stunt double for Shirley Temple in the 1930s, and bit parts in Hellzapoppin', Samson and Delilah, Invasion of the Sorcerman, The Trip, which is tonight's link with our centre of the universe Roger Corman, and his final film appearance was in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome as the master portion of Master Blaster. An impressive career for an actor just 2 feet and 11 inches tall. I'm taller than that. Don't forget to notice him as we return to the denouement of The Corpse Vanishes.